Hello and welcome to the Football Funders Christmas special. Two of the three members here today, myself, Dan, and of course, Ryan.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, and good night.
So as we said, of course, it's Christmas. So we'll get on to our first topic. Merry Christmas, everyone. Coronavirus. Currently, people haven't seen the rules. Scotland have recently changed their COVID rules so that clubs can have fan base in, but only 500 fans per game. And England have kind of agreed to just carry on playing. So my question, Ryan, is almost, do you agree that this football should maybe be postponed for a while? My feeling is if you can't have fans in the stadium and the players are that concerned, maybe it should be postponed. A lot of clubs are having serious COVID issues. In my opinion, the league should be postponed.
No, I don't think it should be postponed. It was postponed briefly last time, but then they magically found a way around it. So for me, my personal opinion, maybe this is controversial, but I think the clubs are actually at fault here because we knew that a new variant had entered the country. We knew that cases were on the rise. They've known how to control it and put the controls in place in the training ground, put protocols in place so that the players don't essentially get corona. So why, when the new variant came in, didn't they just put the protocols back in place? Ask the players to bubble up with their families to make sure they're available instead of doing, say, what Phil Foden and Jack Grealish did the other week, which was go out on the lash after beating Leeds 7-0 and come back from training completely wasted and not get in the following game squad because Pep wasn't happy. You can't say, oh, let's cancel football, let's not let football fans into the stadium, if you're going to allow all the players to go on a jolly whenever they feel like it and do however they please.
Jack Grealish had that issue, didn't he, during the first lockdown, where he was out and about being a city. For me, I disagree with you. I think if the cases are as high in sports as they seem to be, we don't know if some clubs are. I can't tell you, for instance, what Charlton are doing, regardless of how they run their training ground stuff. But there's so many games that are being cancelled due to the amount of COVID cases, and obviously the new variant supposedly spread so much easier. That one goes, that's your squad down. There's so many games being cancelled. They're not, first and foremost, they're not going to do it. And I tell you, the one reason exactly why the Premier League won't do it is because their season next year starts early already. The Premier League season next season starts in July due to the World Cup. So there's no way they're going to delay it because they'll be running into the season. I think, in my opinion, speak to the players, see what they feel. See if the players feel comfortable because, you know, in the first lockdown, the players were given the option, do you want to continue playing or do you want to sit out? They've not been given this option this time. It's just play. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. As much as I was upset when Charlton players, you know, decided not to play because of COVID and kind of breached their contract in certain ways, I thought it was good that they got the choice.
If people want to give them the choice, then that's up to them. For me personally, I'll just repeat what I said. Clubs, if they're that worried about corona, why haven't they put protocols in place? Why aren't
we don't know that they haven't, though.
Well, no, but if you look at it last time, when corona hit the first time, every club was automatically put under protocols by their leagues. You had to follow protocols, the 2-meter distancing rule, leaving in one area, coming out the other, not using certain facilities because of the fear of spreading corona.
But can you sit there and tell me for sure you know that the clubs haven't got their own restrictions on?
Well, yes,
we don't know.
No, we can, because Jack Grealish and Phil Foden have just been out on the lash, as I pointed out. There aren't any restrictions in place on these players at the moment. This isn't a case of everyone's bubbled up and there's restrictions at the training ground and it's still running riot, so we have to shut the league down. Like you said, the whole country in England is still open for business. There aren't any restrictions besides you have to wear a face mask on public transport and in enclosed areas and work from home if possible.
I believe that clubs will have been smart enough to say, this is the rule at our training ground. See, I'm not behind the scenes, so I can't tell you, but I would be shocked to find out that the clubs don't have some separate ruling for their own players. If they don't, more for them. But I would hope and believe that they would do that.
Let's say, for example, they do have some protocols. The protocols are obviously not strict enough because, like I said, I'll go back to the Jack Grealish example. Everyone's still having Christmas parties and whatnot, be it at football clubs or outside of football clubs. So for me personally, the Premier League have stated that if you've got 14 fit players, including one goalkeeper, the match goes ahead. It's that simple. They're having a meeting today. I think it's the captains, managers, and the Premier League, and I think the PFA are there as well to talk about player welfare during the pandemic. But you've got a squad of 25 players that are registered. So you can play any one of those players without breaching any Premier League rules, and you can use any under 21 players that you want to play as well.
But
you can
this
make
goes
the
to
argument that the quality of football might not be as good, but it's well within the rules. So from my point, if the clubs have locked down their training grounds, like Man United did, we had to shut our training ground completely, and players are coming back in staggered phases right now to make sure it doesn't outbreak again. If clubs aren't doing anything about the potential rise in cases, why should they shut football down?
Well, I just think your point that you just made about 14 players, that COVID cases are going to happen. It's just a thing that people are going to have to accept. They're going to happen. You can't keep throwing out, and again, it's something that, from my point of view, taking out the Premier League into consideration, thinking more about the Football League. Football League clubs don't have big squads. If you get 6 COVID cases, your squad's shut. You're not going to fill a bench. Charlton, for example, had 4 COVID cases last weekend. We didn't name a 7-man bench because we didn't have 7 players to sit on the bench. We only had 4 injured. I think, again, like obviously I did say the Premier League in my question, but I think it's for the Premier League, they can get through it. My concern is the lower league clubs. They're not going to get through games. And then the players that are fit are going to get so many injuries. It's unreal. I mean, Charlton play, I think, 6 games between 2 weeks ago and New Year's Day. That's ridiculous. That's almost 3 games a week.
Sorry, just I understand that, but really quickly, if you postpone games, you're going to have an even bigger fixture pile up in the future. So that's a no-win situation, regardless.
But
of how
I think
they do
if you tell them now, you can either have 3 games a week now or play every Saturday, Tuesday in April. They'll take every Saturday and Tuesday in April.
Yeah, but they won't play every Saturday and Tuesday in April because they already do that every week. So you're going to try.
But we don't. Our April is Saturdays.
Is it?
That's what I'm saying. Our Aprils are pretty clear because it's the end of the season. They keep it Saturday, so that they can chuck postponed games into April.
Right. Okay. I
because we have a stupid schedule with.
But at the end of the day, somewhere there's going to be a fixture pile up. It's just going to happen. Whether you postpone it now or postpone it later, you're still going to be dealing with a higher number of fixtures. So that's a no-win either way. You're either going to deal with it now or you're going to deal with it later. The only question is, how much of a squad have you got to deal with it now or later?
That's the problem. You're hoping that at that point you have a squad. Right now, you don't have a squad.
But there's no guarantee that you're going to have a squad later as well, because as I go back to my original point, if clubs aren't putting strict protocols in place to lower the case rate, then you're going to, come April, you can still have a fixture pile up and you can still have 6, 7, 8 people away with Rona. It's not going to make much difference. That also, given the fact that a lot of players have announced that, well, the statistics seem to be fluctuating somewhat, but the vast majority of players aren't fully vaccinated or boosted. So a lot of them have declined to do it because they're concerned. I understand their concerns because, like, their body essentially is their tool for work. So if they take the jab and something goes wrong, then they can't play. I understand. Also, I understand the opposite with Joshua Kimmich at Bayern Munich, who didn't take the jab, got coronavirus. His lungs are now screwed, so he's off for about 6 months. And now he wishes he'd had the jab. I understand the player's dilemma, but at the end of the day, there's nothing to stop what's happening now from happening in March, April, May time, because coronavirus isn't going to go away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's just, my thing is deal with what's in front of you now, and then kind of we'll deal with the future when we're there. Like for the Football League especially, we don't have that deadline that the Premier League do with the World Cup because we're not going to have players going. So we can run later in the summer if we need to. If we need to play into June, we can. And we can start our season in August because, let's be honest, Charlton, our Plymouth, our Sunderland going to have any people at the World Cup? 1, maybe 2 in December. When the World Cup's going on, we'll still be playing. The World Cup in December stops the Premier League. It doesn't stop the lower leagues. We'll still be playing. So for the Football League, you probably can postpone games and push them back to a later date. Hence, kind of meaning that if there is COVID cases in April, we can still play in June, May, when the Premier League the Premier League, obviously, because of the World Cup, has to start things very is it rigidly, I guess the right phrasing. You know, they've got to be rigid with their fixture list because they have to get the season done by May, have to get the season started in July so that they can have the break in December. Is it November, December? I can't remember where the World Cup is.
I think it's November, December time because I've just been playing it on FM, ironically. But I maintain. Look, at the end of the day, I will just maintain the point at this. If the clubs put in every measure they did when coronavirus first came around, and they're still struggling to put out a squad, then maybe you should be talking about postponements at any level. But while players are fit and healthy and being allowed to roam free, and clubs aren't doing anything to help themselves, I don't think they've got an argument for postponing games. I think a lot of this nowadays is we've got so many foreign players and so many foreign managers that aren't used to playing at Christmas time. They're used to their winter break. And that's not how it's been done in England, because it is a long held tradition that you take your kids to the football matches on Boxing Day. So we've always had fixtures over Christmas. Jurgen Klopp was banging on about it last night after their game. I think it was against Leicester, if I remember rightly. I think it was a Carabao Cup game.
In the Cup, yeah.
And he was banging on about it. He's like, we've got to play on the 26th and the 28th. It's not right. Jurgen Klopp's been here for years, and he's still banging on about it now. And they're just trying to put coronavirus on top to try and make their point that they need a break from fixture congestion.
Do you not think, though, that is too close to play a game? Like a 1 day break in the middle, do you not think? And especially if you're traveling, so let's say Liverpool play at home, and then on the Saturday, so Boxing Day is a Sunday, then they play again on Tuesday in Southampton. There's not a rest period for them. Nothing to do with COVID. That's a completely separate conversation.
No, I don't. Because at the end of the day, these players, number one, you've got a 25-man squad. That's within the rules of whatever league you're in. You are entitled to use those 25 players how and wherever and whenever you see fit. So you've got 25 players to pick from. So you can potentially put out one team one day and one team another day. And in the case of someone like a Man United, a Chelsea, a Liverpool, even an Arsenal, the vast majority of those 25 players are full international players. So the drop in quality is minimal at most.
That leads me to where I think the biggest problem is. A drop in quality for Man United and Liverpool and Man City. And obviously you're talking about Jurgen Klopp, and I completely agree. I feel for the teams like Burnley and Southampton that their second 11 is nowhere near their first 11.
Yeah, but to be honest, their second 11 isn't much different from their first 11 because their 11s aren't very good. We've talked openly on this podcast about how Newcastle's team would struggle in the Championship because it's not good enough. So whether they replace Joe Linton with Dwight Gale or not, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference.
I'd rather have Dwight Gale.
Well, I would as well, to be fair. But there you go. The quality is not much different. And like I said, you can make the quality argument from a fan's perspective, from a viewing perspective, but from a Premier League rules perspective, it's a non-argument because it says you're only allowed to use these 25 players. You can't go out and sign any more between now and January, and you can only register them at a certain point. So you've got 25 players to pick from. That's obviously if your squad's fully fit. You can fill your bench with kids. Everybody does it. So have at it.
Most people have to.
Well, exactly. Have at it and get on with it. You know, I don't understand why there's uproar. How long's football been going on in this country? 200 years?
Yeah, more or less.
Every year, bar the war, I think, we've played at Christmas. This should be a non-issue.
The last thing I'll say on the matter is I think we've come, in my opinion, we've come so far in able to look at the players' bodies and what's good for them as people and players, that I think that for me, the schedule needs to be adjusted a little bit. I still have no problem playing around Christmas. However, I think maybe we'd take a game, like if you took away the game on the 28th and played 21st, 26th, 31st, that's fine. They could do with having that one game just to let the players rest. I know they've got a big squad, but
I don't understand why these players need rest. They come in, they train for essentially, I think, about 2 hours a day, right? They're pampered. They're given massages. They're given cryo chambers. best things to eat is served up for them on a platter. You know, in between games, they essentially, unless they've got a long run, they spend very little time on the training pitch. We've heard so many managers, particularly foreign managers, complaining that they don't get enough time on the training pitch. All they've got is game and rest day, game and rest day. There's no chance to hone their skills. So if they're doing 2 hours training a day and spending the rest of it being pampered and lying around, I'm sorry, if I'm a professional footballer, I can play 2 games in 3 days, because I play 1 game, I come home, I do nothing, I have a nice massage, I go in a cryo chamber for a couple of hours, I get another massage after that, I have a nice pat down and a rub down, a nice nutritional valued meal, go for a kip, turn up, play another game the following day.
I think it's safe to say we have very different opinions on this matter. But I think we'll go off it. Otherwise, I think we'll be here for another 2 hours, recycling the same thing. I think you're very on the let's do this historically, and I'm very let's look at the players' welfare in a bit. So we'll move on.
Please tell me, before we move on, please tell me what is affecting the players' welfare so much to play 2 games in 3 days.
I just think the body, it's scientists and the way that sports science works, proves that the body needs multiple days of recovery, or not multiple days of light work, to be able to play and be at that level of sports. It's just something that, you know, if you speak to any sports science, when I studied sports science, that's what it showed us, that your body takes a few days to recover to make to its full power. And obviously they want you at your full power every time you're on the pitch. That's, from my point of view, that's it. I mean, I get, as you said, like they're getting pampered and everything's made for them, great, but their body still needs to be at the right for them to play, in my opinion. But we'll move on, otherwise we'll be here literally all day. So the next segment was your idea, Ryan. So I'll let you you kick us off, because you sent me a video and I've watched it. So I'll let you explain it to the viewers.
It's ridiculous. Right. Well, yeah, we were looking at coming up with different segments for the podcast, and obviously Pete's not available at the moment, so we've got one less brain to brainstorm. So I came up with the idea of most iconic goals we've ever seen, and this could be for any reason. It could be for either one of our clubs, it could be on an international stage, in just a goal that you've seen that you've never forgotten. So I sent down a goal from a player from 1996, an AC Milan player called George Weah, and it was AC Milan versus Verona. And basically, I mean, Dan, you've seen it, he won the ball on the edge of his own area from a corner, and promptly took out the entire Verona team and spanked the ball in the back of the net. I mean, I wish we could had the rights to show this on the
Twitter page. Though. I can send it on the Twitter page.
Yeah, pop it on the Twitter page.
What I'll do is,
if can have a look.
We've got any ones that are particularly fantastic, like that one, we'll stick it on the Twitter page, and everyone can head over to @FBall Thunders, nice little plug there, and have a look at the goals, because I imagine there's going to be some worldies and some special ones. I've got some special ones. So you're going to kick off with George Weah. I'll throw in a goal that I was at the stadium to see, and it was against Charlton. It was Robin van Persie for Arsenal. The year we got relegated, it's down the right-hand side with, I think it's Laurent, puts a cross into the back post, and Van Persie is in mid-air, and I'm pretty sure he shinned it. But the way it flies from the edge of the box into the top corner, it's outrageous. And even the whole Charlton fans just stood up and were like, well, you know, fair play. Because there's only certain things that you can see that just makes you go, wow. And that was one of those moments. I sent it to you, Ryan, so you can have a look while we're talking about it.
Let's have a look at this.
From a Charlton perspective, Charlton goals, for me, again, being personal, Patrick Bauer's winner at Wembley in the 90th minute, that's going to live in my memory forever for iconic goals. Back post header, the commentary, I probably can tell you the commentary from the Sky commentator off the bat out, just sitting here. It's fantastic. So that's probably my two that stick to my head and that involve Charlton. Ryan's currently looking at it, watching Robin van Persie take the piss out of our tired defence.
Is this from when he was at Arsenal?
Yeah, this is from 2000.
That's ridiculous. Has jumped up and volleyed that into the far top corner.
I'm pretty sure he shinned it, but even if he has, like, it's not bad, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, people rave about the bicycle kick that Wayne Rooney did against Man City. I think
he shinned that as well,
or 6-2, and he shinned that as well. It wasn't exactly the sweetest of touches. That is ridiculous.
But the other thing, another goal that I always remember Robin van Persie's, because it's very similar, is when he played for Manchester United. He scored a volley. I think it was against Villa at Old Trafford. A
Right.
ball came
Yep.
over the top and he spanked it. And those two goals are so similar. It gives me horrible flashbacks. Have you got any other goals? I've got a few more, but I'll let you
I've
hit a
got
few.
loads. There's one I'm trying to find at the moment. It was a Dennis Bergkamp goal. It was unbelievable. He was stood in front of a defender. I can't remember who he was playing. I'm trying to find it now. But he was stood in front of the defender. The ball came up to him. He literally flicked it round one side of the defender, run
Newcastle, I've
round
got
the
it.
other side of him.
I've
And
got it,
then,
Newcastle.
is it Newcastle? I'm trying to find it
Yeah.
now. And
He does up dab his ass, and
oh
then
my God. It's just, he just pirouettes on the ball. There's no other way of saying it. It's just like, here it is. Like flicks it up, round the defender, runs round him, and then side foots it past the goalkeeper. It's ridiculous. Some of the other goals that spring to mind is Paul Scholes' volley against Bradford City. I don't know if you've seen that one.
yes, I've seen it. Yes,
It literally, the cross came over. I think it was Beckham crossed the ball from a corner and the ball didn't even touch the floor and Paul Scholes just spanked it into the top end corner of the net. The goals at the Nou Camp for Manchester United from Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer are always going to live long in my memory. I will never forget them. It's one of the few times that I actually went completely bananas during a football match because the situation was just as unique as the goals themselves. You know, people will argue they were just toe pokes into the net, but they were in stoppage time in a Champions League final when you've teams basically being completely battered. You had no right to win it, but you still end up winning it anyway. And the biggest one that stands, there's two big ones that stand out for me the most, both Man United goals. There's the David Beckham goal against Wimbledon. I don't know if you remember this one.
Yeah.
From the halfway line, just looks up, sees the goalkeeper off his line. He's like, ping, top corner, done. And then
Rooney recreated it, didn't he?
Did he?
West Ham. Yeah, recreated it against West Ham, probably about 10 years ago now.
Who thought, was it for United?
For United, yeah.
I must have missed that one. I don't know how I missed that one. And the other one is the 1999 semi-final FA Cup versus Arsenal, where Ryan Giggs took the piss out of the entire Arsenal team by beating about 6 players and beating, I think, was it Patrick Vieira twice before promptly just volleying it into the roof of the net past a completely hapless David Seaman. It was, again, sometimes you got to ride your luck in those situations, and he did ride his luck just a little bit because it came off of his shin at one point. But at the end of the day, it all counts, and you've still got to be there to pop the ball in the back of the net.
So, yeah, as I said when you were looking at the chart, the Arsenal Van Persie goal, my favourite goal is one of my most iconic goals is Charlton's goal at Wembley. And frankly, if it came off his arse and went in, it'd still be an iconic goal because of the situation. Like at the game, it come to about the 90th minute, and I was standing with my mum and my brother, and I was talking to Josh, and then I turned around to mum and said, "We're not going to score." And mum said exactly that. She said, "I don't care if it comes off their ass." Now, my mum doesn't use many obscenities, so when she said that, I knew it was serious. And then obviously a few seconds later we did score. As I said, I can quote the commentary from that game. My best friend Joe, who Ryan knows, he sat with my dad in the stand next to us, and apparently Joe said, I'm going on a bit of a story, but I quite like this story. Joe said that when the ball got to the edge of the box from our goal, he said to my dad, and Joe always tells me the story, Joe went, "Oh, how many more chances do we need?" And as the ball went in, my dad went, "Oh, just this one." And then obviously we scored. So dad's fucking Notre Dame. So well done. But yeah, going back to most iconic goals. So far, we've kind of spoke about worldies, haven't we? Like one thunderbolts or fantastic plays. Sorry to do this to United fans, but I think the most iconic goal in my mind is Sergio Aguero, where against QPR. Like just that moment, I remember watching it on TV. The commentary again, the way it was built up. Man United had, I believe, played Sunderland, and their game was finished.
Yes, we were stood there waiting for confirmation for the result to come through, because I think they were in like the 7th minute of stoppage time.
Yeah.
All the players were stood on the pitch. They started to celebrate, I think, if I remember rightly, and then they were told, "No, calm down. The game's not over between City and QPR yet." And then they were all stood on the pitch waiting, and then Aguero scored, and then you just saw all the Man United players hit the floor.
The bit that got me watching that game is when Aguero scores, even the QPR fans start celebrating. Just like someone different's going to win the Premier League. Now, if it was the other way around, everyone's bored of Man City. It'd be, come on, Man United win. And then the other goal that always springs to mind is, we discussed it when we were talking about left backs, but Roberto Carlos's free kick. That thing is filth.
Which one? The one at Le Tournoi?
Yeah, why?
That was,
Just
that
filth.
was insane. He spanked it and it looked like it was going miles wide. And then all of a sudden, it was like someone had stopped it, like frozen time, changed the ball's direction, and then clicked play again. And then it just shot into the back of the net. It was insane. I mean, to be fair, if we're talking free kicks, Ronaldo's hit a few special ones.
Portsmouth,
Yeah.
United.
Everyone talks about how good Ronaldo is at free kicks.
No,
He's not very good at free kicks. He's just had a few blinders.
He's free kick. I think during the Euros, whoever the one of the Portugal games were on, and the guy leading the chat said, "Oh, Cristiano Ronaldo set piece. You know, he's going to probably net one." And one of the people in the studio, I think it might have been Paul Scholes, who turned around and said, "No, don't give him it. His record is terrible. Give it to Bruno." And then they had a debate in the studio about who should take the free kicks. And, you know, as much as people, right, Ronaldo's a fantastic player, as you said, has hit some outrageous free kicks, but most of his free kicks hit the wall. So
Yeah.
I don't want him on my free kick.
People rave about him, but in compared to someone like David Beckham or even James Ward-Prowse or Bruno Fernandes, he's not even close.
No.
In terms of technical ability. It was really weird because it's like he started really well and he developed this unique style to get the ball up and over as hard and as fast as he could. And it worked in the beginning, but it was almost like he became so obsessed with the technique and perfecting the technique that it just went completely wrong and he ended up being not very good.
Do you remember David Luiz started hitting his free kicks like that and they were pinged in?
If you watch Rashford,
he did it with his, but I think with Luiz, it was with his side foot. But he did the same technique with the side of his. It was bonkers. But yeah, Marcus Rashford's free kicks are also woeful.
Sideshow Bob, yes.
Yes,
David Luiz, Sideshow Bob.
And
the
only other goal that really came to mind was, and it's one where the keeper's off his line, but still, Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored over a kick against England for Sweden from about 30 yards out. The ball goes up. Joe Hart comes running out of his goal because it's Joe Hart, and he just heads it straight up in the air. And Zlatan from 30 yards overhead kicks it and doesn't even bounce, just goes in the net. So it's unreal.
I mean, Ruud van Nistelrooy, I remember one from Ruud van Nistelrooy where he was never the fastest of players, but he had a bit of pace. I remember him scoring a goal against Fulham where he just like outskinned half of the Fulham team and then just very coolly side-footed hit the ball into the net. I could really go on forever with goals. I really could, but we probably will end up being here all day.
I think one more to mention, and I don't know if you remember it. Danny Rose scored against Arsenal on his league debut. The corner goes in, and I think it's cleared by one of the Arsenal defenders, and it drops to about 35 yards out. And Danny Rose hits one from the edge of the box, cross to the other corner. And I think David Bentley might have done it for Spurs as well, actually.
Well, if we're talking about debut goals, you've got to talk about, I'm not sure if it was actually his debut, but Rooney's goal against Arsenal when he was like 16. Do you remember that one?
No, I remember his debut was Panathinaikos, so I don't know.
That was his hat trick for Manchester United on his Champions League debut.
I don't remember his actual debut. I remember the Champions League debut.
He was like 16 years old and he scored it against Arsenal, I think it was.
Right, so we'll move on then. We've done some iconic goals, lots of iconic goals. As I said, we'll pick a few of our favourites and we'll stick them on the Twitter page. George Weah will go up. I'll put Patrick Bowers up so I can watch it for myself. And you know what I will do? There's also a video from Wembley where you can see Pete because the camera was actually watching a Charlton fan who was sat in front of Pete. So that'll make him laugh. He won't thank me for that, but I'll do it. So we'll move on to wingers. So we've been through a lot of positions. We were going to wait for Pete, but sadly he's not available at the minute. So just me and Ryan. Before we get on to the list, because I imagine Ryan's got quite a list. I don't. I have about 6 players because I think wingers are disgustingly overrated in football. They're made out to be the kings, and there's only a handful that I think I would be absolutely fine picking for every team, if that makes sense. because a lot of people would be like Eden Hazard, Raheem Sterling, and just no, not for me. So I'll let you go, and then I think I'll chuck in as we go along.
Well, no, before we do, make your case for them being overrated.
Well, I just feel like modern day wingers, every time you watch a game, it's all about the wingers. And no matter, a winger could be awful and then do one step over and he's man of the match. Or he can beat one player and he's man of the match. I think the wingers get this leeway. I don't know what the word is. Like a winger can be woeful, but if he does one moment of magic, that's it. It's fine. Wingers played fantastic. How many games seen on TV where I don't want to pick on someone, so I'm not going to name a name, but they've played awful, but then they've, put in a cross that someone scored from, and the commentator's saying he's had a fantastic game. You're like, well, actually, he's run at him 10 times, done 15 skills, and fallen over for most of the game. He's been crap.
But can't you make that same argument for strikers? They
well, yeah, you can,
and
that's why when we do strikers,
you're going to make the same argument.
I'll make the same argument because I think that my list for central midfielders was massive because I think central midfielders have the opposite problem. People forget central midfielders exist because they don't do flashy stuff. They just do the hard work and the grind. Of course, some of them do the flashy stuff, but in the majority, where I think wingers are kind of the celebrities of football, strikers, wingers, the forward line, if you will. So I don't have a long list because there's only a few players that I really enjoy watching or did enjoy watching that I felt were always at a level of quality, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I may not get the right word.
You've got to do it over a sustained period of time. For example, like you said, you brought up Eden Hazard. For a few years, he was fantastic at Chelsea, but he's gone to Real Madrid and we've not seen hide nor hair.
Yeah, like he doesn't make my list. People, I will say before we get onto the list, obviously me and Ryan are 80s, 90s, 2000s. That's kind of our reach. Late 80s for you, really, 90s, 2000s. So likes of George Best, obviously fantastic wingers, but doesn't make my list because I didn't see him play.
Yeah, and
Stanley Matthews was another one that came up a lot. I didn't see him play.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I'm not of that era. I'm just after that era. I'm sure had Pete been with us, he would have raised those names. I think for me, starting off, the main one is Ryan Giggs. Being a Man United fan, he's the most decorated Premier League player in Premier League history, I believe. One of the top appearances in the Premier League as well. We talked about his goal against Arsenal a few minutes ago. I don't want to get into him as a person because there's a lot of stuff going on around that at the moment. But as a football talent, I suppose for me, he's the iconic winger. Tricky, skillful, fast. Almost most of the wingers I associate, they're always quite slim or quite small built. So yeah, I mean, Giggs for me is the first one that pops to my head.
Yeah, I mean, he made his debut in
1991, I believe.
91, and he was playing on the wing until 2009-ish.
Yeah, about then, and then he started moving inside.
Fucking last 18, 19 years on the left wing before moving, because his last few years was in centre midfield, but people don't realise that even at 34, he was still on the left wing.
Yes, and he also had a lot of injuries. He had a lot of hamstring injuries throughout his career. There was a period of time, I think it must have been around about 95, 96, where people were really questioning whether Ryan Giggs was going to get sold because there were a lot of clubs in Italy that were looking at him. Inter Milan, I remember being really after him. And he was getting injured so much that everyone thought, well, as fantastic as he is, Man United might actually just cash in here and sell him because they can't keep him fit. But he's gone on to have one of the longest careers in Premier League history, so you can't really argue it. Who's the one besides Giggs that sticks in your mind?
Current day, well, I think all time, Giggs, and then I'd say Ronaldo from Man United early Real Madrid years, because obviously when he went to Madrid, he did start on the wing before he moved up front. So I think Ronaldo's early success in Madrid and the latter stages of United, where he was predominantly a winger, deserves a lot of credit. Because people now will say he's a striker. I haven't got Messi on this list because I will put Messi on centre forwards. Although he did start on the wing, I think his predominantly was in the 10 or as a striker. For me, Ronaldo and Giggs were actually the top two names on my list for wingers. For much the same reason, he played there, I think 6-7 years on the wing before he kind of went up front. And as you said, it was about consistency. And even when he went from United to Madrid, he got better, didn't he? Before, and then they moved him up front. So, like, even as on the winger, he was still cracking in. And again, I don't always think he's all about goals, but you can't deny Ronaldo's talent, can you? So I think if he's not on the list, you've made a big mistake for anyone that's made a list like this and not put Ronaldo on it.
I think the problem for me is there's 3 players that we're going to talk about at some point, and I don't know where to put them. And that's Ronaldo, Messi, and Mohamed Salah.
Funny
because all 3 of them, they potentially play anywhere across the front 4. If you're playing a 4-2-3-1 or whatever, they play left, right, in the 10 as a striker.
So I went off the basis that when I watched Ronaldo at United and Madrid, he was off the left, coming in off the right. Messi, as I said, plays in that 10 striker role. And Mo Salah, who's also on this list, predominantly plays off the right, coming inside. So as much as he is a forward, he's a wide forward. So he's on my list. As I said, I've only got 6-7 names. And even one of them, I'm not even sure he's a winger. So we'll get onto him in a minute. But yeah, Salah's on the list. Best player in the world right now, isn't he, really?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
Amazing talent. The guy that is just, as soon as you gets the ball, he's a greedy git. Like, he doesn't pass. But when he's feeling it, you can't stop him. There's just no one in the world that's going to stop him.
Controversial opinion, but he really reminds me of Messi in that sense. When he's in form and he gives you the ball, you don't really need anybody else because he's just going to do it. Obviously, I'm talking about Messi and his pomp. But...
the thing about Salah that amazes me is, for a small lad, he doesn't half throw his body around. Yeah, he's not afraid to get dirty and throw his, because he's not big. He might be 6 foot, but he's not big built. But he throws his body. He's got no problem with it, and I think that makes him an even better player. That I think you could put Salah as a 9, and he'd still be fine.
Yeah,
I think his talent's just there.
Yeah, and I think he's also got, because of his size and his body shape, he's also got a lower center of gravity. So it makes him more solid both on the ball and off the ball in terms of challenges, because the center of the weight of his weight is essentially in his feet as opposed to in his upper body. So he can stay up longer. But yeah, no, Salah's definitely up there.
So the one that hasn't made this list, staying on the Liverpool front, I haven't put Sadio Mane on this list because I wondered if he's a step down. I really rate Sadio Mane, but I'm not sure he's up there with Salah, Ronaldo, Giggs, a few others that I'll mention, me personally. And I think there's probably others on this list that aren't at that level, because Ronaldo is like he's God tier, isn't he? You know what I mean? Like Giggs, they're on a tier of their own. But Mane, I think, is underrated. And I wonder if Salah's not at Liverpool, do we see Mane as a better footballer?
Controversial opinion. Sorry, I actually think Mane's a bit overrated.
Yeah,
I think he's a very good player, but I think he's very one-dimensional. And I think in order to be going up an echelon, you need to have a variety in your play. For example, if you look at Ronaldo, Messi, Salah, even Wayne Rooney to an extent, they could do everything. They could create, they could score, they could do it in different ways. Whereas Mane is very much, he reminds me of Andre Kanchelskis from the early Man United sides, which was like super fast, head down, direct, will score goals. Great to have, but you're not going to put him up there with the likes of Giggs and everybody else.
So I'm going to carry on to my list. The first name I want to mention is someone, I don't know if you'll agree, but I loved watching him for Chelsea, Madrid, not so much at Madrid. He did a bit off at Madrid. He did okay at Madrid. And then Bayern Munich, Arjen Robben. I loved watching Arjen Robben. As I said, he's not on a tier of Ronaldo and Giggs and Salah, because I think they are the top echelons of wingers. But I think Arjen Robben's, again, we're talking about consistency. Barring injuries, if you ignore the fact that he was injured a lot, which is the negative on Arjen Robben, when he was fit, outrageously good footballer, had injury problems, but as a player that I think I saw a stat that like he missed like a quarter of every season and still had leading assists in every league that he played in, like 8 out of his 13 years or something. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a fantastic talent, but I mean, I think for me personally, I think when we're talking Aaron Robin, I think it's C. Eden Hazard.
Yeah, I'd have him above it. It's Hazard for me.
I think they're very similar in terms of their ability, in terms of their injury record. I mean, the other one you talk about Aaron Robin, I think another one in that conversation is Frank Ribery.
Yes,
of France and Bayern.
I didn't have it. I mean, I put Ribery at a lower level than Robin personally, but
I would actually put him a level above Robin, but that's just me personally. I think for me, the one that's probably not made your list, it may have done, I don't know, but I think it changed the game when it came to wingers, was David Beckham.
Yeah, of course he's on the list.
He was a very different type of winger. People would argue he was a wide right midfielder as opposed to an actual winger. But he definitely changed the game, and everybody's talked about his set piece delivery and his crossing ability. For me, he's second to none in those aspects. But I also think I've said this on the pod before, and I know Pete disagreed with me, but I actually think David Beckham is massively underrated. His passing was first class. His first touch was amazing. He finished very well, and he had a fantastic engine on him as well. He could really get about the pitch. So I think David Beckham doesn't necessarily get the credit that he should.
The few names that I've got will go on to kind of follows the theme of Beckham. Where I was young in that kind of early 2000s period, as far as I'm concerned, Beckham's a god because what he did for England was fucking unreal. So I'm quite firmly based in your camp on that argument with Pete, but I might have to go back and watch it. Maybe I changed my mind, but I mean, when I grew up, like Beckham had the ball, you stared at your TV because he was either going to put in a cross or whip one top corner. You were fascinated by what he was going to do. So there's two. I've got a few others named. The first one I'll throw in because it's one that was on all the lists is Luis Figo. He came in on every list, and obviously, talent, a Rolls Royce type of player, wasn't he? Really,
he was amazing. And what's more, he had huge balls because he went from Barcelona to Real Madrid in a straight transfer. It was so hated. He actually had a pig's head.
The pig thrown at him.
He was so hated, but he was an absolute. I remember that Portugal side very well because they had Figo and Rui Costa as well. They were Rolls Royce players. Yeah, I mean, we didn't see him in this country, unfortunately. I would love to have seen him in this country, but he was a global superstar. You knew whoever he was, much in the same way that you knew who the original Fat Ronaldo was.
I can't wait to get on to him next week. I'm so excited. Again, another one that when I started to get into football, I said that early 2000s period, someone I used to love watching was Robert Pires.
Yep.
The way he linked up with, to be fair, you could put anyone in that Arsenal team on this list, but that kind of Bergkamp, Henry, Perez, Lundberg just used to cause carnage. And it was great to watch.
Side. Yeah.
Yeah, absolute carnage. And Robert Pires moved, again, we were talking about it with Luis Figo, a bit like a Rolls Royce. It never looked difficult for Perez. He never looked like he was running at full speed or he was trying too hard. He just got the ball and went, right, that one. Yeah, I'll go this way. Yep, there you go. And watching him play football, and I actually went back not long ago to watch an Invincible program that Sky Sports were running. And again, just watching him, and I thought, hang on, I know you're talking about Henry, and I get why you're talking about Henry, but have you seen what Perez has just done? Are you sure? I think it's not underrated because he does get the plaudits, but I think he deserves more of a mention when they're talking about the Invincibles.
I think the other thing like you said, he wasn't a powerful runner. He glides. I think the biggest problem for Perez was not only did he have Thierry Henry, a rapidly maturing Thierry Henry in the side, he also had one Dennis Bergkamp, who we talked about earlier, and he was another technically gifted player who could.
I'm sure we'll see both of them, by the way, next week.
Glide all over the pitch. So that side was so full of amazing talent that I don't think anyone really quite gets the credit that they necessarily deserve, with the exception of Henry, because Henry was he was originally a winger who became Juventus, who became a striker under Arsene Wenger and kind of broke the mold as to what a striker should be. He was essentially the first modern striker that we see today, whereas beforehand it was like big number nines, Alan Shearer's, people like that.
The other one on my list that I put down from watching as a kid was Rivaldo from Brazil, and what team would he have been at when I was young?
Barca.
Yes, he'd have been at Barcelona. Yeah, Another one that I think I got him towards the back end of his career, really, like the football that I watched from Rivaldo was probably, I don't know how old he was, but I'm sure he was over 30 at the time because he's actually, I think he's into his 50s now. Barcelona, Milan kind of crossover. I know he played for Deportivo at quite a high level and obviously in a fantastic Brazil side. I really like to watch Rivaldo because, again, another one that never, when I watched him, didn't have necessarily the pace because he was in his 30s. But play out on the wing and it probably helped him, the players he was around, but again, just moved effortlessly and played nice touches, made runs that worked, clever. I loved watching Rivaldo. Again, it might be my younger eyes, and I need to go back and have a watch again. But Rivaldo was someone that, when I think of my younger days, he's one of them that comes up. The other one that came on the list a lot, I just like to say that's definitely not on my list, is Ronaldinho.
I was waiting for this.
We've done this, me and you did a podcast, didn't we? A long time ago, one of the early ones. It was just me and you, and we spoke about Ronaldinho. You can do all the skills you want, mate. You're not on the list. You're not close. Sorry.
I will repeat what I said. I think creatively, I think he was outstanding. But like we both said on that previous podcast, he wasted his career to a large extent.
We know why, and the reason that his career kind of went down the toilet is very sad. But, you know, at the end of the day, it happened, and you can only judge off what happened, can't you? And as much as he was a fun player to watch, I wouldn't put him in this conversation. And also, at his peak, was he at his peak for that long, realistically?
He wasn't, no. He had about 3 or 4 good years at Barcelona, and then I remember him turning up at AC Milan. And
because you're looking at 02 to 06.
Yeah, really, that was
went to Milan. Sadly, went to Milan. That's when the tragedy happened, and that's when he turned off from football, didn't he, really?
I don't really see him, like you were just talking about Rivaldo. Rivaldo was a classy player, but I wouldn't really see him as a winger. I would have put both of those two in as a 10, but...
Well, so my only reason I put Rivaldo in as a winger was because I wanted him... I didn't think you could put him as... See, we did midfielders as central players. So I didn't want to put him in as a central midfielder. So that's why he's on this list rather than a central midfielder.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I didn't know whether we were going to do 10s or whether we were just going to include them in strikers, because strikers one is going to be a long one.
Going to be. I think we might have to do like a 5 each or something and just debate, because we're going to be here all fucking... Like, we could just talking about Premier League strikers, we could be here all day.
I think it'll also depend on what other topics we've got. We might be able to leave out a topic or two in the future one.
I could roll off 5 strikers right now, and you know, we'd be arguing over them for the next 10 days. So maybe next week we could discuss the best Premier League striker that leans into it. Or
yes,
because I mean, I have my opinion, but I imagine that everyone else in the world has a very different opinion to the next person. So
yeah, right. Let's just go quickly over my last two. This one I don't think you would have heard of, but his name was Dejan Savicevic, another AC Milan player. He was very much in the Robert Pires mold, like you said. He wasn't a conventional winger like Ryan Giggs was, or an Andre Kanchelskis. He was very cultured, very stylish. His passing was amazing. And the big one for me that has always stood out outside of England for me was Pavel Nedved at Juventus.
Oh, yeah.
He was...
Oh, shit.
Oh, he was such a player. Literally, he had the engine... The easiest way I can describe it is he was Giggs and Beckham rolled into one. That's the highest compliment I could possibly pay him. He had the technique, the delivering ability, the pace, the power, the poise. I remember him, and I remember we're going to get onto strikers next week, but Del Piero, I remember him and Del Piero having this kind of almost telepathic link playing for Juventus. They were unbelievable to sit and watch. I'm sure I've forgotten a bunch of other wingers as well that people could mention. I mean, Mark Overmars, I think, should be in with a shout of being there or thereabouts, because he was fantastic for Arsenal, not as good for Barcelona, but he was a hell of a talent. But Pavel Nedved, oh, what a player.
Yeah, Pavel Nedved, someone I completely forgot until you said it, and then the brain clicked. Watching him at Juventus, to be fair, that Juventus team from that kind of decade's unreal, wasn't it? We'll get into it next week with Trezeguet and Del Piero.
Even going back before then, they had Vialli, Ravanelli, Roberto Baggio. I mean, Juventus have had some ridiculous teams.
we'll move on to pick, bench, sell, because otherwise our brains are going to keep ticking over and coming up with new. So I'll give you 3 to choose from. I'll give you Giggs, Nedved, and Rivaldo.
Well, I'm starting Giggs. Oh, Nedved. I think Nedved's on the bench then, and I'm going to sell Rivaldo. Rivaldo, sorry, I said Ronaldo. I meant Rivaldo. I think you've got to start Giggs for everything that we said about him at the beginning. I don't think there's been a better left winger ever, is there?
It's hard, isn't it, to pick it up? Otherwise, I mean, if I was to do that, I'd have to give serious thought between Giggs and Nedved, because Nedved was really something special. But I think I might just go along with what you've picked.
Yeah, I think right. Okay, let's go. Mo Salah, Luis Figo, and David Beckham.
Oh, that's a bitch. Oh, you're enjoying that one. I can tell by the smile on your face. Oh, shit. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm going to pick Luis Figo.
Ooh.
Going to bench Mohamed Salah.
I'll buy Becks.
And with a broken heart, I'm going to have to sell David Beckham.
That's revenge for all the shitty Charlton ones that you've given me over the years.
Oh, trust me, if you think the ones that have been so far are bad, wait till we come to the conclusion of pick, bench, sell.
We're almost there.
I know.
It's next week.
I'm tempted to postpone it just in case until Pete gets back. Because
I have a feeling it's going to be like Bentman, Donker, and someone else, and I'm going to have to sit here and rock myself to sleep.
I think it's going to be even worse than that, Dan.
I'd say I did think about. I always give Charlton a mention when we do this list. Obviously not, but Charlton have this horrendous thing that every winger we have is useless at football. So if you're looking at my generation of Charlton, our best winger is probably John Robinson. If you remember him from the early 2000s.
The only 2 that I can really stick in my mind as wingers for Charlton are Sean Newton. Well, 3 really: Sean Newton, Ademola Lookman, and John Robinson. So there you go. Pick, bench, sell.
Oh, the other one I'd add to that list before I do that is Goodmanson at Burnley. Obviously, we had him before Burnley.
Yes.
Although apparently he's learned to defend, which he didn't show that at Charlton. So thanks for that, Johan. I'd start John Robinson. Charlton boy, still works for the club now. Lovely fella, but also another one. Just he got the ball and just buggered off with it. And when I watched him, it was the back end of his career, and he'd still just beat players. And when we went to the Premier League, and I'm talking like 2002, 2003, he's 32, 33, and his ability to still push a ball around someone and go and get a cross in. I've got a DVD from I think it's 02, 03. And the amount of goals that Jason Yule scores because Robinson just goes, there you go, I'll tuck you in afterwards as well. You know, puts him in bed, tucks it up, gives him his cocoa and buggers off again. Then I'd bench. So I don't remember watching Sean Newton.
So it's an easy sell for you then.
So he moved on in 01, 02, went to Wolves. So I may have seen him, but nothing that I remember. So Lookman's the backup. Yeah, it's Adi Lookman. Adi Lookman's obviously the most recent one. He's one of the best players I think I've seen make his debut. The only one I'd say that I saw and knew that was better was Joe Gomez, and I think every Charlton fan will say that. When Lookman and Gomez made their debuts, but you knew instantly they're not going to be here long. They're too good. Konsa was the same, but for some reason he got a few injuries and hung around a bit longer. But Lookman was... he made his debut at 16 and teams in the championship were scared of him. He bossed the championship. I actually remember he scored against Rotherham and I was at yours. Ironically, we won 2-0 away at Rotherham and he scored and I started and you asked me who he was and I said he was 16. He's just scored. And I remember saying when he got his move to Everton might not be the club for him, but I think he'd have success and I'm hoping that Leicester keep him because he's done all right for Leicester. But yeah, going back to what I was just saying about Charlton have shit wingers. Once Robinson left, we had Jerome Thomas and Darren Ambrose for about the next 6 years. And Jerome Thomas Darren Ambrose was okay. but is scarred by the fact that he left to sign for Palace. So that instantly makes him a scumbag. And Jerome Thomas was just really bad at football. And then who did we replace them with? And then we had Carl Reed and Lloyd Sam. And Lloyd Sam was another one that came through our academy, showed signs, but he could have done with a third league, if this makes sense. He was way too good for League One, but wasn't good enough for the Championship. He needed like a new league. He needed a Championship 2. That was his level. And then even when we went up under power, we didn't really play with wingers. We had Jackson playing as one of our wingers, and he's slower than a 180 bus. So so wingers haven't been our strong point. Bowyer doesn't play with wingers, and Jackson doesn't play with wingers. So yeah, wingers have been quite a soft spot. Where Man United have had, they've had their fair share of wingers, haven't they?
Yeah, and fair share of crap that goes with it as well. I'm surprised you weren't kind of rubbing your hands with this one to give me a crap one, because we've had
so I was thinking of it, but I couldn't kind of nail the worst ones on top of my head. A lot of them that I was thinking of, like Nani, I'd find Nani a hilarious footballer, but I know there'll be Man United fans that think he was great. I thought he was turd.
Nani was hit and miss. He could either be fantastic or he could be atrocious. So it depends which Nani turned up on the day.
To be honest, I think I only came up with like 6 United wingers throughout the years, because I had like Blomqvist, Kanchelskis, Ronaldo, Beckham, Valencia, who actually was more of a right back for you over the years than a winger. Depay was there, but shortly.
I think Valencia actually doesn't get the credit he should, because he's actually, if you look at fullbacks now, you could argue that he was the hybrid that became the new fullback, if you see what I mean. He was the winger who reverted to a fullback and became basically a deep lying winger now, which is essentially what all fullbacks are.
So I was watching a program the other day with on YouTube, and it was a Man United fan who was on there, who said everyone that doesn't support Man United doesn't understand Antonio Valencia's role at Manchester United and how important he was to Manchester United. They said, like, because when Giggs left, when Gary Neville left, so we didn't really replace him, and we never replaced him. He said, but Valencia was, a big stopgap that worked for Man United. And he was saying that if you asked a lot of United fans for the last 10, 15 years, who was your favourite right back, he says most of them will come out and say Antonio Valencia. The only thing that you could argue with that is the other option was Raphael. So don't really have any options.
Yeah, I mean, that, like you said, there aren't really that many choices, because we went through a phase of Chris Smalling playing there, Phil Jones playing there, Raphael played there, John O'Shea switched from left to centre to right.
Wes Brown, I think, at one stage.
Wes Brown was there as well. And I mean, the other thing is Valencia doesn't get the credit he deserves as a winger, because there was a year where Wayne Rooney was on absolute fire. I think he scored about 31 goals that season.
10-11, I think it was.
And he doesn't score half of those goals without Valencia. If you look, just go and watch that season. Valencia's just chucking balls in left, right and centre, and Rooney's just hammering them in from all angles. So I don't think Valencia gets the credit he really deserves.
Going back to the point that I made at the beginning with Valencia, one of the problems I have with wingers is because people like Valencia, because they weren't flashy and stylish, as you said, didn't get the credit because he didn't do amazing skills and he didn't score amazing goals. But what he did do was get down the line and put in great crosses. That's what I want my wingers to do. I'm quite happy with you. If you're buying me a winger, modern day wingers now don't really exist, do they? Those type of wingers. They're now inside forward. I still love that. Get to the byline and whip a cross in. Like, for instance, at Charlton, we have Jaden Stockley, who's the beanpole, but we don't have anyone really that gets down that wing and puts the cross in. Because we play with wing backs, we do, because Lecco plays out there on the wing back. But when we had Nigel Atkins and we played the 4-3-3, we never had someone to put that cross in. And I still think there's a place in the game for that. Even if it's off the bench, get the ball into the box type of player.
I think it is. I think also we had a period of players like Theo Walcott and Aaron Lennon who looked like those kind of wingers but couldn't deliver. So in terms of crossing, everybody sort of moved towards the inside forwards. Valencia, for me, I think was the closest thing we ever got to Andre Kanchelskis. After Kanchelskis left, we replaced Kanchelskis with David Beckham, which you can't argue with.
Yeah.
And then we went back to a similar player, a very direct, hard, fast running winger in Valencia. Keith Gillespie we had for a little while as well, who was Very, very. Oh, did he play for Charlton?
Yeah,
I
he
wasn't sure
spent
he did.
spent 6 months at Charlton.
But we had Keith Gillespie for a little while, who was a fantastic young talent, very much in the similar mold of the Valencia and Kanchelskis. But we had to give him up to get Andy Cole, and we definitely got the better end of that deal. I'm trying to think. Bebe's probably the worst I've seen. He's one of those players who, if you look at his stats actually aren't that bad. I think he started 7 games for Man United, scored 3 goals or something like that. So if you look at it, you're like, hold on a minute. But
Still plays now as well, I believe.
He was atrocious for us. He could barely control the ball. But
There's someone else as well, and I can't remember the other one.
we had David Bellion, who came in as striker turned winger, and he was atrocious. He was really bad. I'm trying to think of who else we've had. Depay, you've named.
Yeah, you had
Nani,
that.
we've discussed.
Luke Chadwick.
Oh, bless him. He did a podcast the other day. Oh, bless him. He did the Man United podcast. He got so much stick, physical features, bless him. He was
Didn't you
merciless.
have Karol Poborski as well?
Karol Poborski was a one-hit wonder, yes. We got him after Euro 96. He did all right, not too bad. He was, again, very much in the Kanchelskis mould, but he had David Beckham. He was competing with Beckham. You're not going to win. So I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I've missed.
I've got I'm online looking at a list of Man United bad performers, and there's some fucking buttes in this list.
Oh, there'll be loads there forever.
But there's not strikers, but there's like Jordi Cruyff, David
Jordi
Bellion,
Cruyff, there you go. There's another winger who wasn't any good.
Quentin Fortune.
Nobody knocks Quentin Fortune. He wasn't the best player in the world, but he could play at left back or left wing, and he run his nuts off.
I think he played centre back for a while as well.
Did he? Bloody hell. He run his nuts off. He worked hard. He was determined. He was
West Brom, I think.
he
Kieran
was a-
Richardson.
Kieran Richardson, overrated. Signed him from West Ham, got rid of him at West Brom. No good.
Yes, what I mean, on the list of shy. The one question I would ask before we move on to shithousery,
Go
on the comment I just made about wingers and kind of inside forwards, when do you think the change happened from get the ball down and get the ball into the box to inside forwards? And if you think of it, is it Ronaldo, that Cristiano Ronaldo effect in, say, 08, 09, 10 that changed the way? Because even if you look at kind of 06, 07, Mourinho's Chelsea had Damien Duff, Joe Cole off either wings. Their job was still get the ball into the box. Do you know what I mean? Like that was still their MO. So when do you think the takeover point was, or the turnaround?
I actually think the catalyst was Thierry Henry.
All the way back there for inside forwards.
Yeah, because he was originally a winger, as we talked about at Juve, and he came over here, I think it was about £6 million, which looking at it now was a bargain. And he was this really lanky, fast winger, but couldn't deliver a ball for toffee. And then he got switched up front, and he set the precedent of what a striker could be as a complete player, as opposed to just being Alan Shearer who would run and head and score. So I
Fine with that, by the way. Either or.
yeah, I think for me, I think it was Thierry Henry that said that a winger could play as a forward.
Right, yeah, so I think we've hit that quite nicely. So on to the shithousery. The shithousery this week, there wasn't a lot, I won't lie to you. There wasn't a fantastic amount of shithousery. So this week, the only one I could really find, apart from people retweeting the last week's one from the non-league side with us.
That was an effort. That was great.
That has been retweeted by everyone on Twitter this week. So I'm going to say we started that. So congratulations. But this week's one, it's going to go to Aaron Ramsdale of, I wouldn't say Bournemouth, of Arsenal. They played Leeds on Monday Night Football. I believe, was it 3-0 in the end?
I think so, yeah.
So there's a video clip of the Leeds from behind the goal. Ramsdale's got a goal kick, and Leeds do what every football club does and does the, oh, you're shit. But as they do it, Ramsdale turns around and joins in with them. And I thought, you know what, fair play. I quite appreciate that. And then from the goal kick that he kicks out, Arsenal score. They go on and score. So Ramsdale turns around, does it again. There's a video of him like giving it to the fans, saying that you're shit, and celebrating in front of the goal, just facing the Leeds fans. And I thought, you know what, fair play. Well done, Ramsdale. you hero.
I must admit, Aaron Ramsdale, I really wasn't sure about him when he signed for Arsenal, as we've talked about in the podcast. But his character is really starting to come through. I'm really starting to appreciate him on a different level. I just hope he doesn't go down the Joe Hart and Jordan Pickford route of where he gets himself too wound up and it ends up costing him his career.
For me, if Dean Henderson doesn't get first team football in the coming, year, really, he's the goalkeeper that I pick for the World Cup.
On current form, yeah.
Because
there's no doubt.
I don't want to pick Pickford ever. And Henderson barely sees the pitch. So I wouldn't pick Henderson for that reason. I mean, if Henderson sees
options?
Pope,
Is that
Johnson, Pope and Johnson. We don't know where Johnson's going to be because he's leaving West Brom. So who knows where Sam Johnson will be. And Nick Pope's form has dropped off in the last year or two from where it was a few years back. So for me, it's my battles between Henderson and Ramsdale. And at the minute, Ramsdale has it quite comfortably because Henderson's not in the conversation.
Yeah, I think at the moment, like you said, I think it's actually between Pickford and Ramsdale because, like you said, Henderson's not playing.
No, so I wonder if Henderson leaves in January or definitely next summer if he can't get that number 1 jersey at United.
I think it depends on who the next United manager will be. If
the next manager comes in and says, De Gea's my guy, if I'm Henderson, I'm saying, right, then you let me go because I've got a World Cup to be in.
I feel sorry for him because had he not got COVID, I'm pretty sure he would have started this season ahead of De Gea.
Like Joe Gomez is someone that I'll always praise. He needs a move, doesn't he? If he's going to try and regain that England spot, there's a spot for him. I mean, with the likes of Tyrone Mings and Connor Cody, there's a spot for Joe Gomez in that squad. So he needs to go and get it.
I'm sorry. I said it on a previous podcast. I'm dying to see Gomez and Fikayo Tomori play together. I just want to see it. They are so unbelievably talented.
Don't care. People will say I'm biased. If you're going to call up the Villa defender, don't pick Mings. Pick the other one. I don't care if he's come for our academy or not. You pick Ezri Konsa, even us Villa fans, is a better defender than Tyrone Mings.
And Mings isn't even playing at the moment. But again, this is Gareth Southgate.
It's a club environment, isn't it? Yeah.
Poo-pooing himself, saying I pick players based on form, and then no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm picking my favourites.
Yeah. He has gone with a club environment, hasn't he? But yeah, Tomori and Gomez, that suits me down to the ground. Thanks. But yeah, so before we head off, because we've come to the end, because Ryan, we don't have a Plonker pundit this week, do we?
No, unfortunately, there's been a lot of cancellations, so it's been less chance for people to embarrass themselves on national TV and radio. So Gabby Agbonlahor will just go. He will be our go-to when we don't have one. Boiled Gabby Agbonlahor when we don't have one. There you go.
So just before we go, I want to give Victoria a shout. If you remember a few episodes back now, actually, it might be a month ago now. It's been a while. We had Victoria on from Her Game Too. Go on to our Twitter page. She's recently been on ITV Yorkshire doing a piece with them just about, she talks a lot of the stuff that she talks about on our podcast about some of the stuff that she was sent when she was working for Sheffield Wednesday. She has a lovely, it's a 3-minute video where they talk about her and the Her Game 2 movement. It's really worth heading over to look at. We Football Funders have quote retweeted it, so you'll see it. And Victoria's also agreed to come on at some point in the new year. So we'll have her back on for more of a chat in the new year. So really proud of their work and Victoria for going on national TV. I think that's really good to get a wider knowledge for them all.
Absolutely. I mean, their campaign's picked up quite a pace because I noticed that they've got an association with Football Manager where they're...
And a lot of clubs now. A lot of clubs.
Where when you're playing the game, because obviously for those of you who've heard me, Dan and Pete all play FM quite religiously now, because thanks to Dan, it was my 40th birthday recently and he bought me the game for my birthday. So thank you for that one. It's been well used. But yeah, even it's like Her Game 2 comes up on the rolling pitch side billboards. So they've well done to them for bringing it. And I would actually really like to be on the show when she comes back in, where we can actually talk some football.
Yeah, so she's admitted before, obviously on the podcast, she admits that her knowledge of all-round football isn't great. She's very a Sheffield Wednesday, which is absolutely fine by me. But yeah, the Her Game 2 movement it's moving at speed. There's so many clubs it's linked with. They've done a deal with Millwall, and Charlotte said they're about to do a deal with a Premier League club, which that's massive, isn't it, to get
Yeah.
on board with Premier League?
That's
So
amazing.
please head over to F-Ball Funders, or not. Of course, you can go to Victoria's own Twitter page, which I can't tell you right now because my computer's frozen. But yeah, head over to the F-Ball Funders Twitter page. It's on at ITV Calendar as well. Find the interview with Victoria, and we will hopefully see her very soon here with the Football Funders. So that's the end of episode 25, which of course has been our Christmas special. So Merry Christmas to everyone listening. Ryan, please talk about your sponsors that you're linked with, and then we close up the shop.
Yes, the Proper Blokes Club is a mental health walk and talk for men. You can go to www.theproperblokesclub.co.uk and see if there is a walk near you, or speak with the guys and see if you can start one with their aid. Being a single guy at Christmas is often quite a difficult time when you live alone. So I'm sure there's a lot of blokes in my situation as well. So make sure you surround yourself with loved ones. And if you do need to walk and talk, check for your local one. Even if you're on Zoom or something, try not to spend it alone. Do get out. We've not got restrictions in this country at the moment, so you can get out, get some fresh air. So do check out the Proper Blokes Club if you feel you need to.
Yeah, and of course, head over to Let Us Talk Mental Health on Twitter at Let Us Talk MH_MH. We have a game coming very soon for making awareness for not only Mind Charity, which is our usual, but also suicide awareness, a matter very close to some people in the team. So yeah, looking forward to that and getting back with the boys, hopefully COVID dependent, sooner rather than later. But thank you, Ryan. Have a good Christmas.
And you?
Obviously, when we're back, hopefully we'll have Pete and we'll be able to discuss some absolute shithousery strikers.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Merry Christmas.